My name is Randy Howell, and you're listening to the Faith and Fishing Podcast.
Welcome to the Faith and Fishing Podcast. I'm Cam.
And I'm Robert. In every episode, we're bringing you faith stories and fishing memories from some amazing members of the fishing community.
So join us as we shed a positive light on all things faith and fishing. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Faith and Fishing Podcast. I'm Cam.
Hey, and I'm Robert.
And we have one of our episodes that we're starting to enjoy more and more, where it's just me and Robert. But we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about. But Robert, how's it going, man?
It's going good, man. We got through another rainy weekend here in North Carolina. So we're recording this. It is the Wednesday after Memorial Day. So it was mostly rain the whole weekend. I did get to go to the beach and fished a little bit in the intercoastal and caught a couple croaker, but nothing major.
Nice.
But, I'm ready for a few nice weekends of not rain. So hopefully that'll, the law of averages say we should get like 20 in a row of rain during the week and sunny and nice weekends.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
Real.
We'll see if that holds true. What about you?
Man, we have had a crazy week and weekend. I have not gotten out and done any fishing. I am just now getting to the point where I can go to work without my back brace, and so I'm chomping at the bit to get back out there, but not quite ready yet. But hopefully by this weekend I'll be ready. But I was looking at my on-call schedule, and so now we've changed it so whenever I'm on call, I'm working that Saturday, and it's like the next two tournaments for CCKF I'm working, and I'm like, oh man, I really wanted to fish a Raleigh Rumble, so I might try to find somebody to switch with me, but we'll see. But yeah, man, what you were saying, if anyone is listening who is not here in North Carolina, the stat right now is we've had 21 weekends in 2023. It has rained on 18 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Like I don't remember, a time where it's almost like clockwork. Friday afternoon gets here and it clouds up and it rains either most of the day Saturday or most of the day Sunday or both. And even through Monday, it was still drizzly rain in and around Raleigh. Monday was decent at the beach, but the other days were kind of washouts for the most part.
Yeah, we got a lot of rain.
Yeah.
All across the state.
Yeah. The beach was so windy, I didn't even surf fish. The intercoastal where I fish at is more blocks, so it's not nearly as windy. But also, too, you don't have the variety of fish back there. I don't feel like. Obviously, it's the same water, but not the same fish as you get in the surf. So, but anyway, we were just down doing some things to the house anyway. So my main thing wasn't to go fishing. It was to kind of relax and tie up some loose ends. And so we got that done, relaxed a little bit. So it was nice.
For sure. Yeah. So, we are ready. We just got a new car. So we are both driving Subarus now. So
yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm ready to throw the kayak on top, but I got to get rails to go across the runners before I do that. But I'm ready to throw the kayak on top and take it somewhere where the Camry couldn't go. So.
There you go. Yeah, you'll be able to get in a lot of places with that 4-wheel drive, so it'll be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, let's go ahead. Let's thank a couple sponsors, and then we'll dive into kind of some of the meat that we were planning on talking about, or at least the potatoes. We'll get to something.
Sounds good.
If a fly rod is your weapon of choice, check out Atollas. Their fly caddy is the most convenient way to get your favorite flies to the water, or just keep them handy by clipping it to your hat, truck visor, backpack, rod case, or just whatever. You can also bundle it up with flies from independent fly tires that Atollas has teamed up with through their Fly Light project. Choose from bundles specializing in redfish, carp, saltwater, or freshwater. Head over to atollas.co, that's ATOLLAS.co, to get your fly caddy today and use promo code faithnfish15 to save 15% on your order. That's faith the letter N, fish the number 15 at checkout for 15% off.
Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle is one of the largest canoe, kayak, and cycling retailers in the Southeast, with a huge selection of kayaks, canoes, bikes, and all the accessories needed to experience paddling and cycling comfortably and safely. Get Outdoors helps to expand and educate the paddling community through their free demos held on local lakes in the Greensboro, North Carolina area, and through in-store clinics and on-the-water courses and demos. And we'll even get your new boat rigged up for kayak fishing for you. Stop by the shop in Greensboro, North Carolina, or check out shopgetoutdoors.com to be wowed by their selection.
All right, so this is a conversation that we have already had, but you did not get to hear the last one because at almost an hour in, I looked up and realized that we were not recording, and so we're coming back in for take two.
Yeah.
So
hey, it was a good conversation that night. Anyway, I had fun, even though nobody besides us ever get to hear that. But we'll cover some of the same things. But
for sure.
Yeah.
So it's kind of we let it die down, and we decided to talk about it. It picked back up, and then we let it die down, and we decided we were going to talk about it anyway, and it picked back up again. So let's dive into a little bit at least of the let's give our 2 cents on the Keith Poche a conversation that went
on. So I'll start out, and I think the last time we had this conversation, it may have been almost 2 weeks ago now that we didn't record that episode. It seems that way anyway.
Yeah.
So, maybe a lot more relevant right after it happened, but, the thing that I really wanted to cover, and the thing that I keep going back to in my mind is well, I guess first of all, if you have a question about something and you're in a tournament and you have a question about whether the water's legal or not, ask the tournament director. And that takes all the gray area out of it before the tournament. If you're practicing, you're like, man, I want to go over to this area, but it's cut off, or there's a beaver dam, or there's a levee with rollers, or whatever the case may be. Ask the tournament director first, and then that takes all the gray area out of it. That kind of is what it is. I somewhat see both sides of it. The main thing that I don't like about the situation, and it's just as relevant now as it was 2 weeks ago, is when you got disqualified. If you get disqualified for something, you might not agree with it. State your case. And maybe even you could state it again if somebody else says something, but then you know what? Go on to the next thing, because there comes a point in time where you've said all that you can say about it, and to keep bringing it up is, I don't know, to me, kind of pointless. So that's kind of where we're at now. And I still, even yesterday, it was yesterday or the day before, saw a post from Poche about, screenshotting something and posting something else about it. So I'm not really sure. Maybe it's all just a publicity stunt because, like they say, any publicity is good publicity, even the bad stuff. So definitely think that probably his boat sponsor, which I think is Gator Tracks, probably getting a good bit of mileage out of this deal. So maybe that's one reason that he's keeping the pot stirred up some, or, but it was at Toledo Bend, and from what I've heard and seen, most people that fish Toledo Bend, and I've only fished it one time and didn't fish the area that was up there on that WMA that he crossed over into. But from what I've gathered from other anglers and hearing people talk about it, it's pretty much commonplace that area is off limits on every bass tournament that's fished there pretty much. I think the same weekend there was another instance on a kayak club that changed the rules so some of the directors or directors' friends could fish that area as well. So that was another, rule deal on the same weekend. And my thought on it is kind of more why people make those decisions to walk that gray area or just outright cheat. I know in North Carolina, and this has been maybe 2 weeks ago too, there was a angler caught who was transporting fish from a local pond and carrying them. I think it was from Lake Murray. So he carried fish into whatever tournament water that they had, and the other anglers could tell that those fish weren't from that lake. And upon further review, he was given the option to take a polygraph, and he refused to. So upon the refusal of the polygraph, they disqualified him from that kayak tournament as well. And then, maybe it's been 8 months ago that the whole walleye deal with the walleye led down we have lead in the fish, and that whole deal that was blowing up. It kind of made me think, like, why do people walk the gray area, push the limits and the boundaries? And I understand that you want to try to get to some fish nobody's gotten to, but I'm not comparing what Poche did to the walleye or even taking pictures and bringing fish in. Two totally different things. But kind of in my mind, if you think that may be a question mark on what you're doing or the water you're fishing, just ask. As far as the outright cheating goes, people get caught up in this whole fishing thing, and not only fishing and posting pictures on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, but the whole chasing the tournament trail, it gets your adrenaline pumping. You want to get you want to get noticed for it. And it ends up becoming this idol that you're chasing. And it's like the Bible says, is that there can't be any other idols besides our Lord and Savior. And if you're chasing idols, whether it's the notoriety or whatever, the pats on the back of that tournament win or placing high up, you're just going down the wrong path. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. I like the competition. I love to fish the tournaments. But even so, you really have to watch it, because I think some of the fishing industry thrives on that, and they market their products and their tournaments towards that idea of, I've got to have this rod and reel because it's going to catch the next biggest fish. I've got to have this brand new bait because this is the one that's hot right now. Or, your Ascend kayak sucks and my Hobie 360 is so much better. Or I've got to have the Live Scope 360 to, I've got to have the Panoptics to compete. You can just about everything that we do in life, you have that next best thing. I've got to get my name up there. I've got to win at this. And it just, when you're chasing those idols, it makes you do things that you shouldn't do. So that's kind of my take on it. Just kind of, I have to check myself in that area as well. And it's part of being human. I mean, it's something that's ingrained in us. Like, we want to get noticed. We love that. We have this big, or at least I do, a battle with my pride every day. And so hopefully, we can and Poche can, and everybody can just get to the other side of this. And man, I hope he still keeps fishing skinny water. I love to watch the guy fish. I was watching him a long time before this ever stirred up. I think he's has been a good representative of bass fishing. And, I hope he continues to do that, but I also hope he lets this die down some and just, move on to the next thing.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I'd make a sports analogy, 9 times out of 10, it's a basketball analogy, because that's, apart from fishing, that's the experience I have in sports. I grew up playing basketball, and I grew up watching basketball, excited to see some of the NBA finals this year. And I've been an NBA fan from as long as I can remember. But I wanted to go back to what you were talking about with the cheating thing and all of that. Like you said, I don't think that Poche was cheating here. I really don't. But going back to what you were talking about with the other guys who clearly were cheating, I think part of it is I've heard it talked about in a few other different media platforms, is the gambling aspect of our sport. And whenever you, like, I know that can be a sensitive subject to some people, because some people are so anti-gambling whenever it comes to poker, but they're so fast to go fishing. And I mean, like a poker match and a bass fishing thing. I mean, bass fishing tournament, very similar setups. I mean, you're not raising the you're not saying, oh, I see you've got 3 fish, I'll raise you $1,500 or whatever. But you're putting your money into a pot, and you're going out. And I mean, yes, there is 100% very much a skill aspect to fishing. One can argue there is also a skill aspect to poker. There is a luck aspect to poker. There is a luck aspect to fishing. It's very similar. And, gambling is a very, very, very addictive thing. And whenever you get into addictions, you start talking about people making decisions that, they don't make sense to the people making the decisions. They just know they've got to have that next hit. And so for some of us, that hit may be maybe a burger. Some of us, it may be a cigarette. Some of us, it may be a drink. Some of us, it may be a fishing tournament. So we start making decisions that are very unlike us. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the case in every situation. I mean, you look at those walleye guys. One of the guys that did it and turned around and got arrested again for counterfeiting money, and sending his son off with fake money, and then saying, "Oh, that worked. We need to do it again," and having the paper trail of that and everything. And I mean, that's more than just I need to win addiction, but it goes back to what you were talking about, idolatry. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, whenever we start worshiping a God other than Yahweh, that's whenever we let these other gods sit on our throne. Going back to what I said earlier, with food, like whenever you have a bad day and you're like, man, I'm going to go get some mashed potatoes and gravy because gravy always makes me feel better. And there's a lot of places in the Bible where God refers to himself as the comforter. Whenever you turn to comfort food on a bad day, you've replaced God with food in that aspect of your life. A new God is sitting on the throne there. And I don't know if anybody's listened or read the book Gods at War by Kyle Idleman. I highly recommend it. It's one of, if not the best books on idolatry that has ever been written, in my opinion. One of the better, just like Christian books that I've read in general. And he talks about the the Hebrew word that is used in the 10 Commandment, or in the commandment of "You shall have no other gods before me." Whenever God is saying that, he's not saying "You shall have no other gods ahead of me." That's kind of how we tend to interpret that. Oh, God has to be number one. God has to be number one. God has to be number one. No, God has to be the only one. He's saying you shall have no other gods before me, as in my presence. Like if God's sitting there on the throne of your heart, the God of self can't be sitting over there waiting for the next the next turn, or waiting until God gets up to go somewhere else. I mean, it's it can be money, it can be sex, it can be fishing, it can be food. I mean, there are all different kinds of idols that we put in or we welcome into our lives, and let it replace God in an area of our life. I mean, as a former youth pastor, I cannot tell you how frustrating travel sports are, because you absolutely sympathize with the kid and with the parent that is trying to help their kid's dreams come true, because what athletic kid isn't dreaming of being a professional athlete? And that takes a lot of work, especially now where everybody is in a travel league. And whenever you are out playing ball every Sunday night, every Wednesday night, every Sunday morning, you're traveling, and you never make it to any kind of youth event or church event, it starts to really wear on your relationship with God. And that's coming from a guy who has not stepped foot into a church, like in the traditional sense, and I don't know, 5 years or so. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's all great points. And you said and went over a lot of some of my favorite vices and all that, that, I mean, you don't really think about it when you're doing it. Like if I have a bad day, I like to stop and get a Blizzard, because the Dairy Queen Blizzard, I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I needed. Because it's that instant gratification that we're all looking for. And when you stop and you pray, and, that does make me feel better when I do that as well. But it's no instant gratification. It's not like somebody's tapping you on the shoulder and fixing whatever the problem was. And I agree with the whole travel sports and being all of my kids play sports or did play sports or still playing sports. And we do travel baseball and softball. I will say that one thing that I have seen over the past really 3 or 4 years is a lot of organizations now are trying to work in a Sunday service. And there are organizations that will stop all the games and they'll do an 8:00 game. And then at 9:30, when those games are done, nobody's on the field. They don't make everybody come to the service, but you're not allowed to be warming up. You're not allowed to, you can sit in the dugout, whatever, but can't be on the field for that 30 minutes. And they have a pastor come give a sermon, usually sports related, to keep the kids interested. That's one thing that I am glad to see a lot of those travel organizations doing, to try to promote that on Sunday mornings. But that is a struggle because there is, a lot of times where we have missed that Sunday service because we're going to play baseball somewhere or softball. So,
Yeah.
that's a struggle.
And that's awesome. I didn't know that was.
Yeah. And it's not all of them, but there are some organizations that do that.
For sure. And a lot of it is also, going back to the God of self. I mean, as a youth pastor, you get frustrated. And part of that frustration is, well, that makes my numbers look bad whenever I go to report to the board of the church how many kids I had in the youth group. It looks like fewer than it actually should be because that kid wasn't there and that kid wasn't there because they were off playing sports. And it, I'm their youth pastor. I should be the one that is shepherding them in this way and that kind of thing. So it's not a clear cut, like one person is worshiping the God of self. It's one person is worshiping the God of sports in their life, and one person is worshiping the God of self, and it ends up in a lot of frustration and negatively impacts a lot of areas of that ministry.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I wanted to, kind of, I had a few things I wanted to say about the Poche thing. And I think I started to say it and then ended up not saying it because I was talking about the basketball analogy and everything. Whenever a basketball player commits a foul or gets called for a foul, they and especially nowadays, the first thing they do is they argue, and they argue.
What?
What? Me? I didn't just clothesline that guy. Yeah. He's not laying there writhing in pain because of me. It wasn't me. I didn't even touch him. He flopped, whatever. The referee has the final say, and the player keeps arguing and keeps arguing and keeps arguing. Guess what? He gets a technical foul. He gets 2 of those, he's gone. And then, what is it, like 17 of those in a regular season? You get suspended for a longer stay. I mean, I'm not saying that Bass should go ahead and disqualify him from another one because he keeps stirring the pot. But at some point, it's like, man, I
totally
did your due diligence. You filed the appeal. It got denied. Sorry, it sucks. Move on. I mean, it was an expensive. It sucks. Yeah. But
I mean, a perfect example of that is Trace Swindle last year, and he's going. I believe it was at one of the opens that he did not have the proper amount of insurance, and when they checked it, they're like, "Yeah, you don't have the proper amount of insurance." And it wasn't that
he didn't have insurance; it was just he didn't have enough.
Yeah, he didn't have enough. He had insurance. So if you're supposed to have a $200,000 policy, he had a $100,000 policy. I don't know what the numbers are, but he had insurance and he had his paperwork there. Just the policy wasn't enough. So it was just a miss on his part. And you know what? But he got so much respect for that guy. He comes out probably the next day or 2 days after, like, you know what? I messed up. I didn't have the right insurance, and they did what they had to do. No hard feelings. I'm going to go kick butt at the next event. And that was it, and I know that's kind of still 2 different scenarios.
I'm going to rush to Poche's defense on this one, because the difference there is if you look in the rules, it clearly black and white states how much insurance you're supposed to have.
Well, it clearly states that your boat can't leave the water too.
But there's gray areas there, though, right?
I would say there is a little more gray area in Poche's case, but if you have a question about it, just ask.
Absolutely.
And there wouldn't have been. And that's my feeling of it is he knew it was a gray area. That's why he didn't ask. He thought he was going to go in there, get away with it, and they were going to be like, oh, well, it doesn't specifically say that. And so we're going to let you keep your win. But I don't think there was ever a question in his mind that was not a questionable area. So that's really, to me, goes back on him. And like I said, I like the guy. I like the way he fishes. I like that he gets up in the damn skinny water. But, it is what it is, and that's their decision. Go on to the next one. And if you have a question about some water, ask beforehand.
I'm just saying that the bass rule needs to be written better.
I agree with that 100%.
It shouldn't leave that much up to the tournament director and the committee or the board.
And this is one thing that we talked about in the last podcast that we didn't hit record on, was that with the technology now, I think that there ought to be a GPS map of everything that's inbounds. I mean, how that you could have an app on your phone if you're bass or whoever, and every angler could pull that map up and see what's inbounds and what's not inbounds, instead of having, and the same thing with the kayak tournaments, instead of saying, well, you have to launch from this ramp, you have to launch from these designated ramps. Well, you might as well be fishing out of a boat sometimes, because if you can't drop off of a public access bridge, which is originally why people started doing, the kayak bass fishing, is because you can kind of get in places that you can't with a boat. But if you have to go from a boat ramp in a kayak because they don't want to manage what water is accessible and what's not accessible, the easy way around that is just to have GPS lines drawn on the map where everybody can see. Or like CCKF does, Mitch does a great job of every tournament that there is a lake with tributaries and creeks, it will say in there, you can go to the Highway 78 bridge, or you can go to this bridge on this creek. And it's very specific what the rules are. And I just don't think that you're talking about a regional kayak bass fishing club who somebody takes the time to say, these are the waters that are inbounds and not inbounds. And then you're talking about the bass organization, and there's a gray area on what water you can fish. I mean, come on, it's not that hard, especially with the technology of today. I feel like it ought to be a shaded area, just like game lands. You can pull up game lands when you're hunting. You can pull it up on a map, and you can see exactly where you're at and if you are in the game lands or not. Why can't a fishing tournament be the same way?
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong. He did not fish illegal water. It was just how he got there that was in question, correct?
Well, I mean, I guess that part of the lake is open to the public. So if me and you went to fish there, it's not off limits to the public. But if you, it's kind of like, for those of you guys and girls that are listening in North Carolina, it's like Jordan Lake, and I think the part that's separated is called Beaver. It's not Beaver Creek. There's one part of Jordan Lake that is totally separated.
It's Falls Lake, the Beaver Dam.
Yeah, Beaver Dam, Falls Lake. Sorry. But it's totally separated, except for, I think, a drainage culvert that you can't fit a kayak through. And every kayak tournament, that's off limits. Now, can you go on your off day and drop a kayak into the water? Yeah, but it's off limits because it's not connected to the lake. So I understand what Poche says. It's kind of like you're locking through and you're getting to this other water. I understand what he's saying. I really do.
I must have misunderstood. I thought that it was fishable water. It was just how he got there that was in question. But
that's the only way to get to that water, unless you can drag through the woods and
you can use the rollers.
Yeah.
and not ramp over them and like he did.
Yeah, but it's the same. It's the same different. You know what I'm saying? It's the
Right.
same difference. If your boat leaves the water, you're using the rollers. He's saying that that's just like using a lock. You know, you go on the Tennessee River, you can lock through several different places. There's several lakes in Florida. They use the locks to get to different parts of the lakes and rivers. But that's that's all laid out, and that's all commonplace. Well, what's commonplace on Toledo Bend is none of the bass tournaments fish that area. None of them fish the WMA, and that's from kayak tournaments to the local tournaments. That's my understanding is all the tournaments that are there, the WMA is off limits. You can go on people's, especially the kayak. I don't know if it was on KBN or another Facebook group, but there's several people talking about, oh yeah, well, after I practiced, I went to the WNA and I smashed them because that place is loaded down with them, but too bad it's off limits for our tournament. And so he knew it was questionable water, but I do agree with what you were saying that if you can go fish it anytime you want to, but it's just how you have to get to that area makes that against the rules. But the rule does need to be written better, and I'm sure that Bass will take care of that in the future.
For sure. All right, so let's think a couple more sponsors, and then let's keep it going.
Sounds good. A huge selection and crazy fast shipping is already enough to turn heads as an online tackle shop, but Omnia Fishing sets themselves apart with their ambassador program. With Omnia, you can send in fishing reports for your local lakes that recommend baits, structure, tactics, and gear. And when another angler takes your advice and purchases something from your report, you get credit for it to spend at Omnia. The best part means that with Omnia Fishing, you can shop by lake and purchase baits and gear that are proven to work where you're fishing. To get started, go to omniafishing.com and use promo code FNF15 to save 15% on your first order.
If finesse fishing is your comfort zone, something you want to learn better this year, or just something you like to tie on as a Hail Mary pass, Jade's Jigs has everything you need and more. And it's all eco-friendly and lead-free. With an awesome selection of baits and colors, they've got a variety of techniques covered for you. Finesse jigs, underspins, Nico weights, Ned rigs, and more are all waiting for you at jadesjigs.com. And while you're there, use promo code FNF10 for 10% off your purchase. That's jadesjigs.com and promo code FNF10 for 10% off. I had to run on that break and go get a cough drop. I've been having to mute myself quite a bit, and my throat is all gunked up. And wouldn't you know it, I grab one of the ones that makes my mouth go numb.
We don't have much longer anyway. Maybe we'll get through it by the time your mouth goes numb.
If I start slurring my words, I promise I'm not drinking whiskey over here. It's just my cough drop. All right, man. So what else did you want to cover on this topic or any other topic?
Hopefully they'll let that Poche thing die down. I mean, I'm pretty much have been done with it, but I did want to cover it since we didn't record that last one. I don't know, man. It feels like the Bass kayak series is gaining some traction. I think that's pretty cool with what Steve has been able to do with that series, and the numbers have gone up. Does appear to me that it has taken maybe some participation away from the Hobie events. I think that whole dynamic is pretty interesting when the Hobies were all selling out pretty quick last year, and now that's kind of dropped off. They did go up on the entry fees somewhat, but not a ton for the Hobies. But the Bass seems to be, kicking butt all of a sudden. So I'm glad that those two are doing really well, and with those two getting better each year, I feel like, and we've kind of seen KBF stumble quite a bit this year. And to me, seems to me like they may be they're gonna have to do something different, or they may be on their last legs from what I see in the participation numbers. And so I know they had to get some money from some sponsors to get some people paid, and there's been issues with anglers getting payouts from that, and the numbers have been pretty low for that whole series. But other than that stuff, I don't know. What about you? You got any other things you want to cover?
On the Poche thing, the only other thing I wanted to say was one thing that Bass has to look at is the safety of anglers. The safety of the co-angler was a good point that was brought up. I think it was brought up on Alex Rudd's podcast a few weeks ago. He's got a co-angler in his boat, and you got to make sure that he is he's looked after. But also you got to think about the guys that are looking up to Poche and decide they want to go and do the same thing. Poche's been doing this since he was like 12. He's been jumping levees and logs and stuff in boats since he was old enough to do it. And so I mean, it's you look at somebody like, I hate to stereotype here, but I feel like a lot of people who really look up to Poche are going to be middle-aged guys on their fourth beer saying, "Hey, y'all, I can do that too. Watch this." No life jacket, none of that kind of stuff. And you just gotta remember, whenever you're wearing that jersey, you're looked at as an ambassador of the sport. And you've got to remember who might be looking up to you, and who might be trying the same kind of thing. And you got to remember that instead of using this as like arguing your cause, using this for sponsor advertisement, saying, when I'm out there jumping stuff I'm not supposed to be jumping, I use Abu Garcia. Instead of doing that, take the time to say, hey, remember, I'm a professional. I've been doing this. Don't try this at home. Kind of make sure that you're giving out that kind of keeping people safe.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that to a certain extent. And you definitely don't want any young guys out there trying to do things that their boat's not capable of, or their skill level is not capable of. But at the same time, you're also blasting off 100 and something anglers, and they're running these boats. I don't even know how fast they run now. I'd say 80 miles an hour, between 70 and 80. And honestly, if you're not an experienced driver of a bass boat, you don't have any business going that fast in a boat. There's no brakes. Right. You can pull up all these videos on YouTube, which is one of my favorite pastimes. Is before I go to sleep, I'll watch the credit card captain. I forget what all of them are named, but there's a ton of them with just boat fails. And so I think the whole safety aspect of it, you definitely don't want young kids trying to jump things, but also you don't want young kids trying to run 70 or 80 miles an hour, and on a blast off situation either, because that's dangerous type deal. And I've seen it firsthand, and been fishing a tournament on a lake where they blast off boats, and we've had already blasted off kayaks, and I'm sitting on my spot, and you get four guys that are drag racing down a creek, and they're worried about the other boat. They're not looking for kayaks, and they're not the most aware. So there is some safety issues involved, not only with the jumping, but I feel like the whole aspect of the blast off bass fishing running fast. So I agree with you, but there's other things that I think all the anglers do that still deserve that. Hey, by the way, we've been doing this in Louisiana since I was 5 years old. I've been driving a boat. Make sure you have a boat that's capable of it, and make sure you're capable of it so you don't get hurt. And as far as the co-anglers go, man, I mean, that'd be a tough situation to be in if you're a co-angler and you're not, you're not for that. You're like, you're with somebody who's like, yeah, we're about to jump this levee. Hold on. I'd be like, you know what? You let me off on the levee, and then you get your running start, and I'll video it for you, and then you can come back and pick me up on the other side of the levee, because that's a tough spot to put a co-angler in. And I feel like the co-anglers are already probably don't want to say a whole lot anyway, because there's a whole co-angler stereotype deal. So that's a tough spot to put somebody in for sure.
Yeah, and I can't help but wonder, does the co-angler get disqualified too because the boater took him somewhere that was illegal?
Good question.
I don't know the answer to that question. I was just
I don't either.
It's a worth throwing that out there.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but I don't know. What else you got? What else you got coming up?
What do I have coming up? Well, I would say I've got a couple tournaments coming up, but I'm working on those tournaments. In terms of fishing, I think I'm just looking forward to getting back out there, and as soon as I feel comfortable picking my kayak up and turning around and getting stuff out from behind me and everything, I'll definitely be doing that. But as far as the fishing goes, that's about it, man. What about you? You got any tournaments or anything coming up?
No, I don't really have anything lined up. I've already had to miss a CKA tournament, I think, because maybe a basketball tournament that we had to go to, and I've had to miss a CCKF tournament. So I'm pretty much out of the running on both of those. For even getting in the top 10 is what I was trying to do to qualify for some of their year-end stuff. But so now I'm just, I'm still going to do some of the tournaments, but I'm not as kind of dead set on I've got other things that are on my plate too. So I don't really know the next tournament I'm fishing. I am going to try, I think it's maybe 3 weeks from now, to take the kayaks down to the beach and maybe delve in a little bit of trolling either at the beach, or definitely going to take them on the intercoastal and see if we can catch some redfish or trout, something like that, and some saltwater stuff. So besides that, that's really it. I've been hitting the ponds a little bit over by work, and it was, with all the rain and stuff, I caught a few fish today. But no, nothing of any size. But right. I'm able to get the line wet anyway on my lunch break.
Yeah, for sure. I will say that's something that I miss. Whenever I was at the bookstore, I did that a lot. We had a couple places just down the road that I could go to and wet a line and put a couple on the bank, but. With my job now, I'm not able to leave the property on my lunch break because I don't clock out for my lunch break. So I can get called out at any minute. So I've got to be ready to go respond to a leak of somebody that is a tenant that's underneath an apartment where the water heater started overflowed or something. So those are always fun calls.
Yeah, right.
I had a lot of leak calls and everything. Work has been crazy, but I'm starting to get the hang of a few things that I felt like were weaknesses before I started. So one of those things being drywall patches. I'm starting to get the hang of it, so happy about that. But
well, good. I got a few places that need patch, so hopefully you can help me out with that.
For sure, man. For sure. Well, let's thank a couple last sponsors and then we'll close it out.
Sounds good.
Mr. B Lure Company is making high quality handcrafted lures and has been for 30 years right here in the U.S. Using all metal components, owner and gamakatsu hooks, and silicone or frog hair skirts, Mr. B is pumping out some awesome spinner baits, jigs, buzz baits, underspins, and more, including some of the most unique bladed jigs on the market. To fill up your tackle box, go to MrBLureCompany.com, that's MRBLureCompany.com, and use promo code faithnfishnpod1x10 at checkout to save 10% on your first order. That's faith the letter N, fish the letter N, P-O-D, so Faith and Fishing Pod, just like our Instagram handle, 1x10. Few things ruin your day on the water as bad as losing gear, but with the retrieval devices for fishing rods, action cams, bow fishing bows, and more from Save Your Outdoors, you don't have to let dropping your stuff ruin your day because you can get it back. The pressure-sensitive filter keeps water from rain and quick dips in the water out, but it lets water in when your gear goes overboard to release a float attached to your gear by 60 feet of line so you can get it back. Go to SaveYourOutdoors.com to learn more and try some for yourself, and use promo code FNFP15 to save 15% on your order. That's SaveYourOutdoors.com and promo code FNFP15. All right, so let's go ahead and close it out. And I'll pray for us this week, and we'll get signed out.
Sounds good.
God, thank you for this chance that we have to get together and talk about you and talk about fishing. Two of the things that are really high on our list of things that we love to talk about. Thank you for every single person that's listening to this right now. Meet them wherever they are, and like I always say, put on a show in their life. Just give them comfort if that is what they need. If healing is what they need, whatever their need is, pray that you meet it in a way that only you can, and in a way that shows off how powerful and how amazing you really are. Pray that you give everyone who is listening and everyone who is not listening safety throughout this week, and whenever it is that they're listening to this, pray that you were just working in their life. We love you, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Nice job.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode, y'all. Y'all take care, and God bless.
See you later.
Thank you for listening to the Faith and Fishing podcast. Faith and Fishing is produced and hosted by Cam Steele and Robert Randolph, and is sponsored by Save Your Outdoors, Jay's Jigs, Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle, Mr. B Lure Company, Atollas, and Omnia Fishing. Don't forget to join the Facebook community, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever app you're listening on. That's going to do it for this episode. Y'all take care, and God bless.